Every parent I have ever spoken to has asked some version of the same question. Why, even when I know what to do I still feel like I'm getting it all wrong? Now, that gap between capability and confidence is exactly what today's episode is all about. I sat down with Sharyn Feldman, registered psychotherapist, founder of Parent Wellness, and honestly, one of the most clear-thinking voices that I've encountered on what it actually means to feel steady as a parent. And here are a couple of the things that stopped me in my tracks during our conversation. Firstly, knowing how to do the tasks is not the same as feeling confident. Confident comes from who you are while you are doing them. Number 2, Sharyn talks about moving from I know to I wonder. And that shift from certainty to curiosity is where real parenting confidence is built. Number 3, you are your child's most important environment, not your home, not the nursery, and that changes everything about how we think about showing up. Number 4, all those hacks and quick tips on social media, Sharyn calls it fast food parenting. And like fast food, it takes the hunger away, but it doesn't nourish you. So if you've ever felt like you've got it all together on the outside, but something on the inside just doesn't feel quite right, then this episode is for you. Welcome to Sense by Meg Faure, where we make sense of the science and art of parenting. Parenting is grey, gritty, and beautiful all at once. And my life's work as a healthcare professional is helping parents feel more confident in a season that can feel really overwhelming. In each episode, we share honest conversations with real mums, dive into the science with experts, and simply make sense of it all in practical ways. This is your space. You're not alone, you're held. So let's unpack the journey of a lifetime with sense. Welcome back, mums and dads. As always, delighted to have you join me. And today we are joined by a fellow parenting expert, and that would be Sharyn Feldman. She is joining us from Canada, so you will hear her accent now. She is a registered psychotherapist, the founder of Parent Wellness, and she supports parents in developing emotional regulation, relational awareness, and confidence in their parenting through therapy, through support groups, and also through educational programs. And actually, that's how I came across her, because I've been following Sharyn for a while on LinkedIn. And I noticed just in the last couple of weeks, she's been talking increasingly around confidence workshops and groups that she's doing with moms. And confidence resonates with me in a very big way when it comes to parenting. So I immediately reached out to her, even though we had last spoken probably about a year or two ago. And I said, you and I need to catch up. So Sharyn, I am really delighted that you've joined me today.
I am so grateful and honored to be here and happy to be chatting with you as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sharyn. And I think before we get into our common passions, I'd love to know a little bit selfishly about your own story and what has drawn you in to work with parents, and also what other areas you work with other than just psychotherapy.
Thank you so much. My path to working with parents really, I started in education. I always knew that I was going to be working with families. I thought I was going to be a teacher. I really had a passion for the early years. I have a sister who's much older than me. She was now she's retired, but she's a kindergarten teacher. And I really thought that's where I was going to find my heart and my work. And I did. I started off there. And I worked with parents with little ones and started to work with parents in the drop-in programs, like the parent and child programs for parents with kids who weren't in school yet. And what I noticed as I was working with them was, as much as I was teaching or creating, circle time and activities for the children, the parents seemed to have so many questions about why this was important, or they were watching their child and they would notice things about their child. And I would be able to kind of bridge that gap between what the parents seemed to understand about being with their child and what was happening for the child. And I found that I just loved that space between. And I really felt like the teachers and the early educators got all the training and understanding on the psychology and child development and what a healthy relationship is like with the child, and the parents don't get that. So the more I was in that space, I thought, I just want to fill that gap. I feel like these parents are just missing that piece. Not every parent comes to parenting with child development background and psychology background, but we really need to have some of that understanding So I moved quickly. I started to get hired to create programs for parents and children. And then I years ago developed my own business running what I called cognitive play. So I was kind of teaching parents about that space, about how to be in right relationship with their little one while their little one was doing things and while they were doing things. And I lit up doing the work. I loved that program. And then I became a mom myself, and becoming a mom transforms you. And the intersection between that experience of watching these other parents and then becoming a parent myself, I think that really pushed me, that I wanted to really understand all the things that create that right, healthy relationship between a parent and a child.
Yeah, that's amazing. So did you then go on and study psychology, having come from a background of education? You then went and studied psychology and specifically psychotherapy.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had my child development background, sociology and psychology, and then worked actually for social services for many years supporting families. And at that time, I went back and got my master's in counseling psychology because I knew that that was really all that I wanted to be doing.
Interesting. And what is psychotherapy? I mean, for those moms who are listening in, the term gets thrown around. Can you talk a little bit to that and really how to
Yeah.
your parenting?
So what's interesting, psychotherapy is really just the process of meeting with a therapist, a clinician who helps you become reflective, who helps you answer the questions that you ask yourself all the time. So we all walk around with this internal dialogue going on, right? Like, why does that bother me so much? Oh, why didn't I do that way? Or why is she doing it so much easier than me? And we walk around with those questions a lot. And what happens in psychotherapy is the clinician will help you. What I do with people is I help people really develop a relationship with that voice, with those questions. So we take a step back and we start to really notice, what do you say to yourself all day long? Or why are things impacting you? Why does that really show up so often in your life? So through the process of psychotherapy, you get to know yourself on a more intimate level than you otherwise would. And I personally believe that parenting, when you come into parenting, it is transformative. It is the opportunity that you would never get anywhere else to develop parts of yourself, to develop yourself in such a way that is more robust, more relational. And the parts of you surface through that relationship of being a parent. So there's nothing like the parent-child relationship. You have lots of relationships in our lives, but the parent-child relationship is unique and it requires different things of us relationally, and it brings out different things than any other relationship does. So psychotherapy helps parents relate to themselves in a way that then allows them to relate to their child in a better way.
And when you word it like that, it just is so obvious how powerful it would be, and actually how absolutely critical. I mean, how can we go through this massive life transition called matrescence? We can't emerge the other side unchanged, and we've got so many questions around what we're doing and why we're doing them, and yet we never actually take a beat to just stop and really just kind of reconnect and answer those questions for ourselves and reflect, I guess, on the process we're going through. And I think the reason that that doesn't happen is that parenting is also terribly practical and absolutely kind of so basic, in that the only things you're really thinking about are, how am I going to get my child to sleep tonight? When do I wean them? Have I got enough breast milk supply? What does this nappy rash mean? So, we become almost very rudimentary in the things that we're looking at in these very practical aspects of parenting. And along the way, and I think a lot of moms are recognizing this, we've lost ourselves and we've never spent enough time actually addressing who is this person who's trying to supply all the needs and be this reflective parent, and, along the way. So I think that's why, one of the things that what's always resonated with me is the word confidence, because I think most parents, if they're honest, lack confidence as they come into this new role, predominantly because we live in nuclear families now. We haven't seen our mothers breastfeed a younger sibling because, it just doesn't happen anymore. And so we lack so much confidence. So I've always felt like, can we give parents confidence? And when I throw that word out there, it's always been around confidence to change nappies, confidence to breastfeed, confidence to get little ones to sleep. But confidence is so much deeper. And I think that was why when I read your LinkedIn post, I realized actually this is something we need to talk about, because there is a difference between being confident and just being able to change nappies and get little ones to sleep. And so could you unpack that for our listeners? What would you say the difference is between just being capable and actually being confident?
Right. So that it's so interesting because we're in this time where there's information everywhere to help parents. Like parents, you learn that you're going to have a baby, and all of a sudden you want all the answers of how to do, right? It's all how to do. What do I need, and how do I do things? And we're looking for the information, and of course, we're living in a time where information is everywhere. But the information doesn't actually answer the emotional experience of parenting. So we learn what to do, but actually it's relational, right? So this idea of capability and confidence, those are two very different things. So being capable means knowing what to do, right? Knowing what and how to do. It's learning steps. So if I want to be a capable cook, I'm going to, read the recipe, and my capability is about learning how to use a peeler, and learning how to use the appliances in my kitchen. So knowing how to do those things is absolutely essential for parenting, right? Knowing how to hold your child properly, and we have nurses, lactation nurses helping us how to breastfeed, how to do those things. So there are a million technical skills that a parent needs, 100%. But the confidence is developed differently. Confidence and capability have to be married. They happen together. So we know how to do the things. And then the confidence comes from knowing what is happening inside of us as we're doing those things. So I mentioned earlier that internal dialogue, that voice that's saying, talks about and narrates our experience. The confidence comes from noticing, what was I like when I was doing that? What was my child's face like when I was doing that? How did that feel for me? How did that seem to feel for them? When did they draw towards me? What was going on inside of me? Where was my anxiousness? What were those thoughts happening? So confidence comes from the whole journey from gaining the physical skill, noticing how we feel when we're doing it, noticing how it plays out, and then reflecting afterwards and saying, wow, how did that go? And when we start to see that whole journey, that's where the confidence comes. It's our capacity to think about what was going on, what we did. And doing that in community is even more powerful. Doing that with a reflective partner, that doesn't mean you have to have a partner, but have a best friend who's kind of that person that you can talk to. Come into a group, a parenting group like the ones that I run. So that internal confidence is key. It's the key to bringing more ease into what you're doing as a parent, which is what you want. When you have that sense of ease, it's going to impact your child in a different way. So it's not the technical robotic skills of knowing how to do the things. It is who we are while we're doing those things that helps confidence develop.
Yeah. So you mentioned a word there that I think is quite key, and that's reflective. You mentioned in the context of a reflective partner, but I'm guessing that it is equally being reflective about how you're feeling, what's happening for you, and also about your baby. Could you unpack that term reflective a little bit more?
So, because like we're saying, parenting isn't just a set of tasks, it's a relationship. And reflective parenting, that's the set of skills that allow you to be present with yourself while you're present with your child. So that involves slowing down. I tell parents all the time, just slow down. We're all in such a rush to get everything done. Everything feels like we're on, like it's a conveyor belt. And you want to get through the whole day and then put your child to bed, and then you can check off the day. Success, success, I made it through the day, and then tomorrow is again. So that reflection, it's about pausing, instead of just reacting immediately. And it's about staying curious, right? Curiosity is part of the reflective parenting skill set. Being curious, like I wonder why I feel so nervous It's not about solving it, right? It's about noticing it. I wonder why my child is turning away from me. Wondering why, staying in that place of wondering. It's about noticing that nervousness. And then the next step would be developing the skills that help you to settle, right? Which start with taking some breaths. So learning how to bring breath in, noticing that you're feeling overwhelmed. Parents talk a lot about being overwhelmed. They talk a lot about it, but allowing yourself to actually relate to the feeling of being overwhelmed is different. And it doesn't mean you stay there for 25 minutes. It means you take 10 seconds to notice what overwhelm feels like so that you can have a relationship with that feeling. All of these skills, these reflective skills about yourself, will make you a better parent because your capacity to be with all the things that are happening for you allow you to then naturally, over time, do that for your child. And then your child will learn how to be reflective, and it's a chain reaction. So what we want to be doing in parenting is becoming the kind of thing that we want our child to be at the end of our parenting career, right? If I asked a parent, and I often do this, describe your child to me after you have successfully executed your 30-year career of being a parent, describe that person to me, describe that adult, because we're actually not raising children, we're raising adults, right? So describe that adult to me. And they'll say, oh, I want them to be, considerate and kind and thoughtful, and I want them to be, to be responsible. And they'll name all of these things. And then we talk about, well, what's your relationship with all of those things, right? So how are we going to get your child to grow up in that way? Being a parent is, you are an environment for your child. So, right, you are the environment. I'll talk to parents in the early stages and they talk about how they're preparing their home, preparing the safety in the home. And they think about the environment. Oh, I need to cover the corners. I need to make sure there's no sharp things around. My child's starting to crawl, and I need to make sure the environment needs to be safe for my child. When the child starts to go to daycare, go and check out the place. Look at the classroom, look at the environment. You are an environment. You are the most important environment that your child is exposed to regularly. You are an energetic, emotional environment. And that child is soaking that in all the time. So the practice of being a reflective parent is you practicing being with yourself and noticing the environment that you are and that your child is experiencing, and then becoming curious and, noticing their response to you. That's what reflection is all about.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I attended a lecture a few months ago by Dr. Claudia Gold, and I'm sure that you're familiar with her work. And she said, we want to get parents from the phrase, I know, to the phrase, I wonder. And she said, it was such a cool thing because, I think very often, and particularly in the so-called parenting expert space, that, there's almost like they look to parent experts or to books or whatever, or to some sort of science to give the answers. It would move us from uncertainty into knowing. So this is my certainty. And actually, what Claudia said in this lecture, which is so true, and you've just reiterated it now, is that the magic actually happens in wondering, in being curious, and in actually, and it really is a lesson for all of us. It doesn't matter, whether we've got tiny kids or if we're in a marriage, is to actually wonder, but why am I responding like this, or why are they responding like this, or what's going on here? And so that wondering is a very key part of it.
That's a really interesting thing, and I talk about wonder a lot. And in certain spaces, in the education spaces, teachers will talk about recognizing and valuing the wonder in children and designing education spaces around that wonder, right? To make sure that you're capitalizing on wonder. I kind of go beneath wonder. There's a willingness, and you almost touched on it actually in what you were just talking about. So before we can be in wonder, we have to be willing, and willing moves us from certainty to uncertainty. So we need a relationship with uncertainty. So this is again an example of reflection, right? What is and this might happen in some of my parenting groups. What's your relationship with uncertainty? So let's talk about that, right? So in a group, I might bring that up to a group of moms, and then they talk about how they feel about being uncertain and how that makes them feel. But this willingness, you have to be willing to be uncertain. You have to see the value in being uncertain and see the relationship between curiosity and certainty, right? So that willingness can be super hard for parents on their own. But in a group, we can all talk about that. And then parents will see that they're not alone, that everybody shares this struggle. So being reflective starts with that willingness to see yourself where you're at, to see what causes you to be nervous and uncertain and what you do about it in those moments.
So interesting. Often in my podcasts, I've spoken about being comfortable about being in the gray, but you're taking this a whole step further because it's not just being comfortable, but it's actually willingly seeking it out and observing it. It's not about just being in that state. It's about actually engaging with that state of uncertainty. Today's Dose of Sense is brought to you by Parent Sense, the expert-based parenting app that gives you daily support from pregnancy to sleep, feeding, and daily routines. Take the guesswork out of parenting. Download Parent Sense today and use the code SENSE50 for 50% off. It's not about just being in that state. It's about actually engaging with that state of uncertainty.
Absolutely. Because I swear, parenting is like everything. I relate everything to parenting. Because in parenting, you are either in connection or you're either in connection or disconnection all the time. You're either connected to something or you're resisting it. And that's life as well. So that is us with everything, and that's us with ourselves. So you're either willing to see uncertainty and embrace it, or you're in resistance to it. So we need to look for that willingness and find our relationship with it and figure out where the issues are. Why are we resisting? What are we resisting? And where can we practice being more willing?
So, I think one of the things that makes this so hard for parents, because hearing you say this makes 100% sense. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of moms who are going to be nodding and saying, well, I really do want to be in this reflective space and seeking out the discomfort so that I can reflect on it and wonder about it. But the reality is that as we're searching for some certainty, because let's face it, that is what humans do. We are always looking for homeostasis, and we don't like discomfort. And there's some discomfort about being in the gray and about not having all the answers. So we're sitting in the space of not having all the answers, and we're quite certain that somebody else has got the answers. And very often where we end up, the place where we are, because we're no longer in a village or in a real village, is we end up on social media. And so we've got these incredibly loud voices that actually really seem to have all the answers. They seem to have it all sorted. They often are not experts. They often are other parents with these very loud voices. And I think that social media influence and the influence of very loud voices in our environment must have an impact on our confidence levels.
Absolutely. I think that if you tune in anywhere, online, even offline, there's this striving to know it all. There's this myth that there is a perfect way, that there is the right way, that if you just do these things, things will be easier. And so we're sold a little bit of a tall tale about where the ease is in parenting. And yeah, one of my frustrations too is that online, everything is about a hack or a quick tip, right? We've gotten into this very strange era, and I hate to date myself, but I'm about to with what I'm going to say. I'm sure mom's going to be like, she's so old. But everything is about a quick tip. Everything is about how to do it quicker. Here's the thing that's going to get you to the end fast, and then you won't have to think about it or worry about it anymore. So I talk about fast food parenting and home cooked parenting. So if we think about fast food, it's quick, right? It's quick, it's convenient, it's easy. It's going to, you're hungry, you're going to go grab the fast food and you eat it and then you're done. You don't feel hungry anymore. But you're not nourished in the same way that you would be. It might taste great, but you know that it's actually not benefiting you in the long run. All it did was solve the problem of you being super hungry and having no time right now. There's not a person I've ever spoken with that is going to argue that home-cooked meals aren't better. So we all know that home cooked meals are better. They're more nutritious. They have more value. It's just that they take time, they take thought, they take care. But when you go to somebody's home and you have a home cooked meal, it's a whole different experience. The food is better. The people are better. People put care and love and they've slowly taken time for it. That's the kind of parenting that I advocate. It's not fast food parenting. It's not, let's solve this problem right now. It's how can we create this whole experience for myself? How can I create an experience for myself and for my child? Because parenting is a relationship where there's this flow between us and where we're having experiences. And then I'm thinking about those experiences. What did I like? What didn't I like? What did my child like? What didn't they like? We do that in all our other relationships. We do that in our marriages, in our business relationships with our teams, if we oversee people, with our managers. We do it in all of our relationships. Parenting is a relationship. If I think about my best friend, we go out, we go to the movies, I come back, I'm like, I didn't really like that horror movie. I don't like horror movies. I'm going to talk to her and tell her that I'd rather see, a rom-com. We experience and reflect. We execute, we experience and reflect. And parenting is the same.
I absolutely love that. I mean, that analogy for me is just so deep, the difference between nutrition and a snack. It's just, that is exactly what social media is. It's just a quick fix. It's a snack. It's a dopamine hit. It takes the hunger away for 30 seconds, but there's no nutrition behind it. Now, when I first saw your comment about your parent confidence drop-ins, which I'd like to just switch across to that, because I'm sure there are a lot of parents wondering exactly what you do. I looked at it and the word confidence was like, oh, this is going to be a quick fix. This is definitely going to be something that we can get parents' confidence up. And what is it going to be? And so it clearly is not going to be that from everything that you've said today. It's going to be a nutritious meal. Can you talk us through a little bit about what your parent confidence drop-ins are and just what happens in that space? How do you work with parents in those groups?
The groups were born actually out of me listening to parents that I would work with one-to-one, where that we would talk about some of these reflective parenting skills, and they would come back to me a week or two later and say, yeah, I tried, I didn't really have time, or it's not, I don't know how to actually do those things in real time. So here's the interesting thing is that the things that we've been talking about, these reflective parenting skills, they don't happen in the trenches, right? You can't develop them in the height of the moment. You have to develop them in a practice space, right? So I tell parents, you want to be able to lift the groceries out of the trunk of the car. So you realize you don't have enough muscle. Okay, I want to be able to lift the groceries better. I'm going to start working on my muscles. If you go to the gym, once a week or once a month and work a little bit, you're never going to be able to lift the groceries out of the trunk. So your intention is there. And then you're like, going to the gym and working my muscles, it doesn't work. So you give up the whole process and you struggle. Right? So we think about this and we're like, okay, you need to develop these reflective skills. You completely understand. So I have one-to-one sessions, parents understand why it's important, but they can't seem to do it on their own. So I started to develop this drop-in group where we could just come together and parents just talk about what's happening in real time. So we start off the session with a grounding practice because a lot of the work I do with parents is about just how to slow down, to take 30 seconds or a minute to just tune in and see how you're feeling. A lot of parents never do that on their own, but in a group, they're willing to practice. They're more willing in that group. So we practice a grounding. I will bring some teaching, so something that comes up often in what I call my parent wellness method. We'll talk about a concept from it, something like, understanding behavior communication and emotion regulation, or what's happening in a power struggle. So I'll kind of talk about that for a little bit of a teaching. And then the parents, we open the floor and parents bring their real life situations and they just talk about somebody will bring up, this is what's happening. I don't know what to do, or this is what happened. And we break it down into very, very small bits. So I coach in real time. Everyone's listening, people contribute. And you know what I've experienced, Meg, honestly, it doesn't even matter if one parent can be there with a 6-month-old, another parent can be there with a 4-year-old, and there's going to be some common theme in the experience. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It is how they're experiencing their parenthood that is showing up all the time. And those themes get repeated no matter what I call the content, no matter what the content is, right? You were feeding, you were walking, you were strolling, you were trying to get them to sleep. That similar thing is coming. So this happens in our weekly drop-ins, and parents just feel like they're not alone. They understand that the confidence, over time, they're going to start to understand that it's not knowing how to do the thing really well. It's not putting on the perfect diaper. It's not that, right? It's not looking at it saying, wow, look, that was perfect. It's how we think about it along the way every day, right? It's how we think about ourselves and how we think about our parenthood that is actually the piece that helps develop that confidence.
I love that. So you are developing a muscle through practice while people are in this group effectively.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. So I think, look, first of all, we are going to try and bring this into the Parent Sense app in some respect, for sure. But until that happens, Sharyn, where can people get hold of you if this is something that they want to do with you?
Oh, yes. So parentwellness.ca is my website. You can find me there. And I'm very responsive to parents. People reach out all the time. So I do consults with parents. I work one-to-one. All my work is online, so you can basically be anywhere. And yes, parentwellness.ca. That's my website.
That's absolutely amazing. So, moms, there you've got it. It's an absolute nugget of a resource. And we have had so many incredible pieces come through today. I don't want to give people a hack, but if there are people who are listening right now and they're feeling okay in their parenting journey, they seem to be doing the right stuff on the outside, but they're really not feeling confident. They know that when people look in from the outside, it looks like they've got it together, but there's a piece of them deep inside that just feels like they haven't got it. Is there a small thing that they can do in the course of this week that can help to bring them into kind of an inner steadiness around their confidence?
Yeah, I love that question. So first of all, to that parent who's listening, who feels that way, first of all, kudos to you for noticing whether you are confident or aren't confident. Just your noticing of the confidence is the starting point. It's the noticing. But if a parent says, I don't feel confident as a parent, my question would be, where do you feel confident? So my invitation to that parent is look in your life, because confidence isn't about one thing. We can feel more or less confident about various things, but our relationship with confidence is where I would be starting. So I would be asking, where do you feel confident in your life? And what are those situations like? And why do you think you feel more confident in those spaces? What brought you to confidence in those spaces? So noticing that would be probably the starting point.
Very interesting. Wow. And that in itself could really be unpacked. I was about to go down a whole rabbit hole because I do think that there is circumstantial confidence where I can feel super confident in a space that's more predictable. And a baby is just so unpredictable that makes me lack confidence. I'm speaking for myself personally. I like to have predictability. That's part of who I am. I'm a slow to warm up personality. Babies are not predictable. So that in and of itself would be something that I'd need to have a look at, and maybe being comfortable with not having all the answers and being comfortable with not everything being predictable. But yes, that could be an entire journey for you and I to explore, but absolutely an amazing nugget. So moms, that is all we have time for. We are very fortunate that Sharyn carved out this time for us in a very busy day and very early in the morning in Canada. So thank you very much for joining us, Sharyn. And yeah, I look forward to working further with you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been delightful.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope today's conversation brought you a little more clarity, calm, and confidence on your parenting journey. If you enjoyed the episode, please do share it with a friend who needs to hear it today. And also go and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss out on an episode. I'll be back next week with another episode, same time, same place, and always here to support you. And in the meantime, download the Parent Sense app to take the guesswork out of feeding, sleep, weaning, routines, and everything in between.